Did you know that you could extend the brush tip on bottles of Tamiya plastic cement? And if you do, it actually reaches all the way to the bottom of the bottle? I'm Chris, this is Offbeat Builds, and today I'm sharing 29 tips to help you become some sort of kit-bashing deity. Let's start with a fun one. Everybody knows about using guitar strings to make hoses, but that's actually my least favourite method, since the strings are necessarily resistant to being bent to shape. You can buy roller tools like this, which make for some nice flexible hoses, but putty takes a long time to cure, and the results aren't always the sharpest or strongest. Now, my favourite method involves wrapping regular old solder around some moderately stiff wire. Take, for example, aluminium armature wire and hand wrap it with solder. It doesn't matter if it's a bit loose, you can just push the coils together. Or if you want to break out the big boy tools, you can do it with a drill. Just clamp both ends together in the chuck and laugh maniacally as all of your hose-based dreams manifest before your very eyes. Stick with this one. I believe in you. Holding parts while you work on them is half of the battle, so here's a few options to make life more stable. In no particular order, you can tack your part to a base so you've got more to hold on to. Some parts can be held in a clamp, and that clamp can be clamped to something. Watchmakers' vices can be useful for bigger parts, but honestly I rarely bother. And the same goes for the conventional vice. And then there's good old blue tack, which isn't just for putting up posters of your favourite YouTuber. Repositioning limbs is arguably the most important part of a kit bash, as it enables you to create poses that the model designer hadn't really intended. The process is the same for most models: chop, pin, glue and tidy. When it comes to pinning, you can use rigid wire for things that you don't want to tweak the position of, like weapons. I like to use Clippy's Best Bits for this. Or if you use a more flexible wire, you can actually adjust the position of parts slightly after it's set, which is pretty handy. Then all you have to do is fill the gap, which we'll get to in a bit. But first, a bonus tip. If your joint's hidden, like a Space Marine shoulder pad for example, you can get away with all sorts of egregious hacking to make it fit, and nobody outside the Inquisition will ever know. It's 40,000 years into the future, so everything's riveted together, obviously. If you want to do rivets the good way, get hold of some spherical beads or bearings and drill a hole to the depth that's half the diameter of the rivet and glue it in place. If you've got hundreds of rivets to do, that's really not practical, and hemispherical nail art beads are your best friend. Or if you want rougher looking rivets, you can always chop up some styrene rod. Bonus points if you use hex section rod and pretend it's a bolt. Here's one from the scale modelling world. Want to make your armour look like it's been roughly cast, rather than hewn from the 3D CAD software of the gods themselves? Well, take some plastic putty, sprue goo, or in my case, Mr. Surfacer, which we'll cover in a bit. Thin it with some plastic cement, and then daub it on your model with the worst brush that you can find. You can add multiple layers if you like, and once it's dry, you can always knock it back a bit with some adversarial rubbing. This one's obvious, but nobody seems to do it. Reference images are invaluable for posing miniatures and coming up with ideas. Don't just copy other people's miniatures, you're not a boring person. I use a lot of historical art, 3D models, movie stills and books. Speaking of which, this is The Book, the ultimate guide to rebuilding civilization. And while it's presented in the style of a history or science guide, this is very much an art book. Yes, it neatly charters the, dare I say, high points of human civilization, but it does so with beautiful, fantastical hand-drawn illustration throughout the 400 plus pages. Yeah, it's a big one, even by coffee table book standards. I'm not sure how useful it would be post-societal collapse, but now, before the event, it's a fantastic source of inspiration and would make an excellent gift for anyone with an arty persuasion. Oh, and I really like the paper, it's really nice paper. Follow the link in the description and use the promo code OffbeatBuilds10 for 10% off your purchase. A big part of kit bashing is getting rid of whatever surface details on your donor part. And with Games Workshop plastics, that's dead easy. A sharp blade can be used to hack away the bulk of the material, and this can be further refined by scraping the blade perpendicular to the surface. All you need to do now is break out the time for some rubbing. There's no shortage of sanding products available, so I'll highlight a few of my favourites and how I use them. Needle files are great for removing a lot of material, and as such they're more of a shaping tool. Sanding sticks, on the other hand, come in a variety of different grades, and by working through them progressively, you can get to a near perfect finish. If you can't reach into an area easily, there's also sanding twigs, though I find myself rarely using them. For larger parts, I like to use sanding sponges. They've got a little bit of give to them, a little bit of squish, which makes them less aggressive on your models than regular sandpaper. That being said, the latter is invaluable, particularly when you've got a large flat surface to sand. Finally, there's my favourite tool, the fiberglass pencil. On plastic miniatures, this produces a paint-ready surface, and since it's sort of brush-like, it conforms to the shape of the model, for the most part. The downside is that it does leave tiny broken glass fibres literally everywhere, which do need to be treated with caution. Look, making parts fit perfectly isn't always possible, so I like to follow the tried and tested method of hiding any mess behind a nice detail part. It doesn't have to make sense, it just needs to conceal and distract. Here are my favourite methods for gap filling. On plastic models, it's hard to beat sprue glue. It's cheap, it's fairly easy to manipulate, and it dries to the same consistency as the rest of the model, which makes sanding much easier. It does take a long time to fully cure though. It can be 12 to 24 hours before it's properly sandable in my experience. And you're also limited to the size of gap you can fill, though you can add multiple layers since it does bond to itself. Oh, and bonus tip, you can smooth the surface of sprue glue with liquid plastic cement, which in some cases may completely negate the need for any work with the scratchy sticks. Then there are tube-based putties, which kind of fill the same role as sprue glue, so I find myself using them less often these days, but for small areas they can be a little easier to manipulate. Superglue also has excellent gap filling qualities, and I often find myself using it for deeper recesses to quickly fill out the bulk of the void, and then switch to a plastic-based filler for the surface. For small surface repairs, I like Mr. Surfacer 500, obviously. Brush it on like a paint, and around an hour later it's hard enough to sand. Really useful for cleaning up those little nicks and scratches that can find their way into your builds. Finally, there are epoxy putties. Green stuff's usable, but you can't really sand it. Milliput's amazing, but requires the correct incantations and a ritual sacrifice to the Dark Lord Epoxia before it'll do what you want. But mix the two together and you've got yourself a stew. It's pliable enough to work easily and dries hard enough to be abraded with your favourite angry paper. Change your blades, just do it, more often than you think. It's obvious really, but it's a common mistake. I buy them by the 100 and they work out at 16 pence each. Just don't overthink it. There are a few tools that I consider absolutely essential for kit bashing. First, and most important, is a good knife. I like Swan Morton scalpels, which, as you'd expect, are super sharp, and the blades are cheap and readily available. Then there's a razor saw. These fine-toothed thin blades make precise, neat cuts. And that's good because the alternative is haphazard, messy and potentially dangerous, which I've been informed is not very cash money. When it comes to drills, a cheap pin vise will do 90% of the work that you'll ever need. I like to have a few about already loaded with common sizes of drill bit that I use. Then there are measuring tools. A nice steel straight edge and an engineer's square will cover most of your scratch building needs. And finally, there are abrasives, which we've already covered earlier. But a cheap set of needle files and some sanding sticks will be more than sufficient to get going. If you want to dig deeper, there are lots of specialist tools that can help, but they're going to be spending a lot of time in the drawer until you eventually need them. Leather punches are great for making plastic discs, soldering irons are useful for working on wire and brass rod, and the rotary death machine certainly has its uses. Anyway, that's enough for now I think. I hope it's been useful, and if you have any questions, please consider joining the new Discord. I'll see you next time, where I'll be embracing the rot. Probably.